Update. Colleagues stole my position, and now I get to watch her struggle worse than I did in it. Original post. I'm a teacher at a decently affluent public school. For the most part, I love my job. I've made genuine friends among staff members, and the students make the hard work worth it. There are, of course, the negative parts of teaching you always hear about: low pay, grading during off hours, etc. But for the most part, the deal has been good. A few years back, I was recognized by my old boss as a potential leader in the building. He stressed to me that I was very data-oriented and well-liked among my colleagues. I know my way around Google Sheets and Excel when it comes to collecting and organizing student data, and I'm really solid with parent communication. I was hesitant, but eventually I agreed and became a leader for a group of teachers and students at the school, in charge of organizing meetings, overall student educational success, etc. That old boss who promoted me left, and I was stuck with a new boss whom I didn't know well. Here's where things get messy. I have sensory processing disorder and mild hearing loss. It's hard to explain, but sometimes I genuinely do not hear things correctly. For example, if you said, "I'm going to pick up Stacy," I might hear something like, "I'm gone, just wait and see." This happens at least once a day, and usually isn't that big of a deal. Unfortunately, it isn't curable, but I manage. In meetings with my new boss, she would push strategies that were based on focusing on students whose state test scores were almost passing. The idea was that you would focus on all students but give extra attention to these students. These initiatives were never written down, and I later found out that this was because the legality of such practices is iffy at best. When these ideas were shared with me, I would constantly ask my boss after meetings to repeat herself, and then check my notes to make sure I had heard her correctly. I noticed at the time that she was passively frustrated when I did this, even though I explained that I had a hearing disorder. Looking back, I wonder if she felt pressured knowing that what we were doing wasn't kosher and if I made a bad impression. Now to introduce the main character of the story, whom I'll call Tenny, since she's the coach of the tennis team. Tenny is well liked by staff members for her years of service to our community in a particular area. I also liked Tenny a lot and figured she'd be a great team member. Tenny, however, like my boss, became repeatedly frustrated when I would miss things she said to me, especially in crowded high school hallways. Sometimes, she would even shout something to me as she walked past. This led to many gaffes and mistakes. I asked her repeatedly to pause and make sure I understood what she was saying, or to just email me. Nothing changed. There were at least 5 or 6 major moments when my hearing wasn't accommodated, when a simple email could have solved a problem. Just as one example, my new boss came into the hallway to let us know that an assembly location was being changed. We were to take the students to a new area, not the old one. Of course, I heard that there was a change, but I didn't hear the location. Tenny was the only one nearby. I tapped my ear, which I usually do to indicate that I didn't hear something, and asked where we were going. Tenny quickly responded and walked away, and once again, I didn't understand. This resulted in me and my students walking into the assembly 5 minutes late after wandering the building in confusion. My new boss asked what happened, and I told her simply that I hadn't heard her correctly. Weeks later, I was called into a meeting with my new boss, and she told me that I was going to lose my leader position due to inconsistency and disrespect toward colleagues. I asked her which colleagues, and she told me that was private. I asked her how I had been disrespectful, and she said that sometimes you get frustrated when you say you can't hear things and tap your ear. I explained that this was the ASL sign for hear, as in, I can't hear you. She said that I should have communicated that. I said that I had constantly asked for written communication. She replied that I shouldn't always expect it. I knew it was a losing battle, and that any explanation I offered would just be shot down. I loved the school and the community, and fighting the new boss was only going to lead to more problems. I shouldn't have been surprised when a school-wide email went out announcing that Tenny was getting the leader position. Tenny was praised by colleagues in reply all emails, and it was frustrating to say the least. I know that she was the one who complained, and it was extremely bitter for me to see her rewarded for it. Cue the next school year. Tenny came into my room and asked me for the student data sheets that I had created using Google Sheets. I told her truthfully that even if I shared them with her, there wasn't much she could do with them. I brought her over to my computer and showed her the formulas I used and how I needed to adjust them every time a new student, section, etc. was added to the roster. She then asked if I could just continue updating these sheets outside of my leader position. I told her, as professionally as possible, that I would love to teach her how to do all of these things, but would need a stipend to do so. She asked whether any of the other leaders were doing what I did. I said they weren't. I was the only one and always had been. I'm a bit ashamed to admit that I took some joy in seeing Tenny's face go cold when she realized I wouldn't fold and that there was nothing she could do except cope with hours of data work each year or become proficient with Sheets or Excel, something I knew she wasn't going to do. And the real kicker? The parents. Parents of students are a joy to work with 99% of the time. I really mean that. It's so fun to work with the parents of the people I care most about. But it's the 1% who make your life a living hell. I've overheard Tenny complaining about being on the phone with a 1% parent for 45 minutes, losing her entire grading period. A call like that would have taken me about 5 minutes, since I have experience knowing how to stop circular arguments and get the parent on my side. What used to take me minutes now takes Tenny hours. Yes, she's getting my $1,500 stipend now, but I no longer have to deal with extra meetings, extra parent phone calls, miscommunication, etc. She's getting all the pain I got, and more. I feel ashamed that I'm taking so much joy in this, but Tenny made my life hell in a place I otherwise love. Have fun, Tenny. Now for the top comments before reading the update. As a former teacher, now disabled, I love all of this for your new boss and Tenny. Why educators are some of the most ablest people I've ever known? I have no idea. Your accommodations aren't a lot to ask for at all, and those two should absolutely know how to deal with a hard-of-hearing person. They can live with the consequences of their choices while you get to have an easier year. Yes, it is wild to see Tenny and other colleagues bend over backwards for a student with even the most mild of disabilities, and then do absolutely nothing for fellow adults. There were multiple times when students of mine were witnesses to Tenny's complete dismissal of me, and I can't even imagine what kind of message that sent them. My accommodations are simple work practices as well, and don't require anyone to do anything that wouldn't be totally normal in a work setting. Important things should be in writing, and typical hearing people miss stuff all the time. You made it look easy, so she thought it was easy. She realized all too late that it's not. A little schadenfreude isn't a bad thing. Also just curious, why didn't you push harder for an ADA accommodation with the new principal? What they did is discrimination and a form of sabotage. Honestly, I should have done it a lot earlier. Eventually, I did file one with a doctor's recommendation, but it wasn't until this past summer. If anyone has SPD, please learn from me and get an accommodation before something like this happens to you. Now for the update 4 months later. It's been a semester's worth of school, so I figured it was time for an update. To say that things have been going well for me would be an understatement. As several comments pointed out in my original post, my $1,500 a year stipend was not worth it. The mental load that left with my leadership position was enormous. I feel so much lighter now, and I've been able to use the time and energy I now have to devote to my community projects. I just feel like I'm overall a better teacher. I haven't taken work home once this semester. On the other hand, Tenny has been miserable. She's always one of the last teachers to go home, even in her coaching off-season, and she frequently cancels or forgets meetings. Unsurprisingly, Tenny has not been considerate of my hearing accommodation, now registered with the district. I keep my own meeting notes and show them to a trusted colleague afterward to see if I heard everything correctly. I usually get 1 or 2 things wrong. Recently, to my surprise, my boss held a staff-wide meeting where she pushed a shared meeting document and calendar practice among all of the teams. Tenny was visibly frustrated by this, but this is literally what I had been doing as a leader before, and seems to be a standard work practice in general. A trusted colleague told me after I uploaded my original post that Tenny and 2 other teachers were the ones who complained about my lack of preparation and inconsistencies to my boss. Since then, I have not spoken to those 2 other teachers unless necessary, but I remain very friendly and pretend like I don't know that they threw me under the bus. One of these teachers I'll call Ben. I didn't find it relevant in the original post, but Tenny teaches the same middle school subject I do, English. So does Ben. Anyone familiar with education knows that English is one of the most heavily tested subjects. Our school is ride or die for state test scores, like a lot of schools in the US. So we put a lot of work into making sure the kids get the highest test scores possible. The TLDR is that, because I've had extra time and energy, I decided to really focus on exercises and other practices to get these kids scoring as high as I could. Our students get more opportunities in high school if they have higher scores, so it would be a win for everyone if I could make it work. I read new strategies and other proven tactics and went all in. These efforts paid off when, at an all-staff meeting, my boss announced that our grade scored higher in English than in previous years. So far, with some of the initial tests, it was a 20% increase from the previous year overall. Wow. But then my boss said something that chilled the room for a microsecond. Be sure to check your students' individual scores to see how you contributed to the increase. Folks, my students were the reason we saw the bump. Tenny's and Ben's scores were slightly lower than the previous year. My boss congratulated me privately, and my job review scores have been the highest of my career. Hilariously, my boss asked if I could share some of my strategies with Tenny and Ben. I said that of course I would. It's not uncommon to share like this in teaching, FYI, but I only shared the documents and nothing else. Tenny and Ben have not approached me to ask how I did it, and I like it that way. My favorite part of all of this, because of a lack of funds, the leadership position is being eliminated at the start of the next school year, and our teams are being dissolved. Tenny went through all of that drama for just 1 year in the position. I'm trying my best not to relish the news and to keep my focus on my own growth and the 95% of my colleagues who like and enjoy my company. My students are happier, I'm happier. I just have to keep my eyes on the positive and leave this behind me. Thanks to all for your kindness and support. And to anyone with a disability, get it in writing with your district so you don't go through all the pain I went through. Seriously. Awesome job. I'm sure a lot of us would have liked to hear that you moved to another school with how you were treated here, but this is much more realistic and still gives a happy ending. If the position is getting dissolved, who's taking over the tasks for it? Or will each teacher now just be handling the data sheets or calls for their own classes, rather than the whole team? Without outing myself, there will be certain tasks we'll have to do, and others that won't exist. I expect my workload to increase at least slightly next year, unfortunately. I almost immediately remembered the original post. I'm so glad you're doing better. I'm also curious what worked for you. We're going heavily into Jane Schaffer for writing and reading comprehension. What worked for you? I restructured my room into pods. Each pod had students of different levels in it. The lower-end students were purposefully placed on the side of the pods that I had easier physical access to. Every time the class did a group or individual activity, I would do secret check-ins to see where they stood. This was especially helpful for seeing how they did on certain skills that the test checked for. I would also sometimes pull these students into my homeroom, something we're allowed to do at my school, and do mini ramp-up lessons with them, and reward them with candy for it, LOL. I kept this strategy a secret from the higher and lower performing students for equity reasons. I would then devote about 10 to 20 minutes a week to test strategies. I was very clear with the students that this was about doing better on the state test and didn't BS them, though I did mention that these strategies could apply to any test they take in life. We went over topics like best answers versus weaker correct ones, eliminating what I call clown answers, obviously wrong answers, pacing, rechecking answers, reading questions before passages, etc. I'm not sure if this helped, but I also gave each student a token, like a cute eraser or sticker, that I described as a good luck charm, or a gift from me to let you know that I believe in you, however they wanted to see it. That's most of what I did, and I left only a few tiny things out due to fear of outing myself. I will say that having the support of my administrator for things like pulling weaker students into my homeroom was invaluable, but I can see why it wouldn't work for everyone. Last story. I am now off on Wednesdays, and it's going to be interesting seeing how my coworkers handle it. Original post. I am working part-time now as the only CSR in our very busy insurance office. This was not my choice, by the way. The agent needed to cut back due to losing sales. My 3 coworkers are in sales. 2 of them hate service work. The 3rd sales rep is new and still learning. If I'm out for just a couple of hours, I get to hear about how busy they were. We had to do this. We had to do that. I didn't get to leave at 5. That's because you don't set boundaries with customers. I never stay late, and all I do is customer service. That's a you problem. They refuse to solve customer billing inquiries on their own and send them to me. I'm not only chest deep in my own work, but they are constantly sending me messages to call this person. Can you look at so-and-so's billing? Or I can't figure this out. Can you look at it? All day, every day. They also send changes to me that they are perfectly capable of doing themselves while they are actively talking to the customer who is requesting the change. If they were at least selling, fine, I am the CSR after all, but sales are down. They spend over half the day chit-chatting and not working. Anyway, it's going to be very interesting to see how they fare with me being out for an entire day every single week from now on, especially if they don't even like me being out for an hour or two on occasion or taking a sick day, because it means they actually have to work. And if they think they're going to call or text me when I'm off, they're in for a surprise. I'm at home, not at work. I'm not getting paid to work, so I'm not working. I refuse to work if I'm not getting paid. They will have to figure things out themselves when I'm out, or I'll follow up when I'm back in the office. I would meticulously track how much work is pushed and left for you on your working days for a few weeks, then race it with management with receipts, showing how these people are just kicking the can down the road into your face. Yes, it seems likely that OP is in good need to set some boundaries with her employers, to make sure they don't pay her for 4 days while getting 5. I wonder how long before the agent figures out they need you full-time more than the 3 losers chit-chatting all day. 2. The new person actually works, but she's still learning a lot. Make sure that any issues they send you that need to be dealt with on Thursdays are done while you're in time off the phones. Let them know that this will be the case moving forward, and the more work they cause you, the longer you will be. Now for the update. Didn't even make it until tomorrow. They are already complaining about how busy they were. I imagine I'm going to hear even more complaining tomorrow about how this isn't working. Well, take it up with the boss. It's not my problem, because it wasn't my idea. That said, it didn't take me long to get used to having a day off every week. My husband and I figured out how to budget with me working 4 days a week, and we can do it. I may decide not to go back to 5 days. As long as the boss is on board, y'all are out of luck. Should have appreciated me more when I was full-time, I suppose. By the way, the 2 of them have spent the last 4 years bullying me. That's a whole other story. A book.